All right, so let's get cracking with a bit of death by PowerPoint. Now, here we go. So, in order to make things easier, because as you probably would have experienced with MS Teams and other sorts of webinar hosting programs, it's really difficult for the videos and the sound to come through without them being choppy. So, in order to overcome that, what I've done is I've placed the videos on my website, and those videos will open up in YouTube. So could I ask you please to go to this page, which was in that email that I sent to you. And this is what you should see. So that's the resources page, and you would have seen all the videos, etc. Did anyone have any problems with that? Everyone's got a chance to do that?
Right. One problem, mate.
What's that?
The video with the Crown Land stuff. Yeah, Dan was in it way too much.
He's the hero. He's the hero of the organization. Now, down the bottom, I've got, oh, beg your pardon, over here on the left, hang on, let's get my head out of the road. There's a link to books. So if you go on to that link to books, you'll see different books that I have penned. Now, down the bottom, like so, there are going to be some windows which will take you to another website, which is where I host my online books. They are also password protected. So, for example, this one here, the password is Crown Lands conducts aerial inspections of fire what? Well, obviously the answer is trails. So type in trails, and it will open up a flip book like so. There we go. And so it'll either be a flip card thing like this, or it might be something like this one here as a magazine style. Just let those images build. There we go. So all those resources are available online, and you will be able to find those through my website. But the key one is the resources page, training resources. That's the one we will be using today predominantly. But by all means, go back to the website later on as need be. All right. So I think I asked you to check out the online CV, so I don't have to do the introduction phase. So I was taking human factors training, CTRM training into the mining industry. So I went out and started getting all these qualifications on all different plant. It was a bucket load of fun, absolute ball. So if you get a chance to go out and get some of those ratings, I highly recommend it. This afternoon, we'll be doing Sparrow Call and No Stopping for Teams leadership training, and there are accompanying books. If you want the hard copies, they're available on Amazon. So what is the course? What does my normal CRM course consist of? First of all, I'll get into the terminology. CRM stands for Crew Resource Management, as you would remember from the training with me. It's now actually called Human Factors Training or Non-Technical Skills, but because of primacy of learning, the thing that you learn initially seems to stay with you longer. So I call it CRM. Some organizations don't like the word crew for Crew Resource Management, so they prefer team. So I then called it CTRM, Team Resource Management. But whatever I call it, they're all the same. CRM, CTRM, TRM, human factors, non-technical skills, they're all exactly the same. And this is what they consist of. So on the screen, you can see a diagram of the way that my course is structured. I'll pull up my little laser pointer. Here's my laser pointer. Right. So we're doing the introduction now. Normally, during a standard course, we do these pink subjects here, which is group 1 subjects, and the group 1 is the individual context. So we look at the human body, our physiology. The element 2 of that group 1 is the human mind, our things like attitude and behavior, motivation, aggression, personalities. And then element 3 of group 1 is the mind-body interface. That's things like fatigue, stress, um, what else? Cognitive
Anxiety,
biases. Sorry, what was that, Shane?
anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah, all those sort of things. So it's the interface between our mind and body. So after we do that first group on the individual, we go into the team or the group context. And the first element in the group context is all about communication. Then we go on to teamwork, and then we finish up that group with situational awareness. After we finish the group context, we go into the operational context. It's how we use that information that we've just learned to conduct our operations. And so we start off with the first element being threat and human error management, the second one being judgment and decision making, and the third one being task planning, briefing, and debriefing. So you can probably see how all those different subjects actually apply to all. But basically, any task that we're doing, whether we're working in an office environment or whether we're actually working in an aviation environment, they all have some input into the safe and efficient way that we do our operations. As I've been doing this for over 20 years, I've seen that there has been a need for specific subjects that are not normally included into a standard human factors or CRM course. And they're shown as electives on the screen. They're what I call my group 4 electives. The first element there is mission crew training, and you all have done mission crew training with me, except for you, Bo. You'll be doing that in a few weeks' time. And that also includes the second element there, which is working safely around aircraft. The third one there is low flying in a wires and hazards environment, something that is key for our style of operations in low level rotary wing helicopter operations. Element 4, there's aerodynamics for non-aviators. Element 5 is map reading and navigation. And element 6 is a new one, and that's for the emergency services. It's a helicopter landing site safety officer. So if you can imagine, say, especially in the outback New South Wales, you have a road accident, they need to bring in an aircraft, say a fixed wing aircraft or a rotary wing aircraft. The person on the ground could be trained to make sure that the site is suitable for an aircraft to land, and then be able to control that site so that onlookers and equipment and objects do not impact on the landing and takeoff of that aircraft. So what are we doing today? Well, I'm glad you asked. So what we're going to do is low flying in a wires and hazards environment, but first we'll do the rules and regulations. So we'll go over low flying, and this will be an opportunity for you guys who have undertaken aerial inspections to start talking about the experiences you've had over the last couple of years of doing these campaigns. We'll be doing teamwork as no stopping for teams. And we'll also be doing judgment and decision making as part of Sparrow Call. So no stopping for teams and Sparrow Call are two trademarked methodologies that I have created that fit the requirements of a human factors course, but also expand it outside of aviation into other environments. And I'll explain that a bit later on. We'll also be doing a threat and human error management, because one of the key reasons we're convening today is to go over the Crown Lands risk management processes. So we will integrate that as part of the human factors course or CRM course. We're currently doing the introduction, as I said. So does anyone have any questions before we go on to the rules and regulations? Just by exception, if you do, speak up. If not, just keep quiet. Okay, I hear nothing. So let's crack on. So you may recall, or you may not recall, from when you did the course with me, we talked about rules and regs. So I'll just go over them briefly. Bo, again, you'll be getting this when you do your full mission crew course, but this is mainly a refresher for people that have done the course, but it was a few years ago. So within aviation, within Australia, we have what's called tiered documents, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And they are documents that relate to requirements and rules and regulations within aviation. As you can see on the screen there, up the top, we have our tier 1 documents, and those documents are government documents. They're the acts, the Civil Aviation Act and the Airspace Act. Those two acts tell all Australians this is what must happen with regards to aviation in this country. But because they're written by politicians, it's all legalese, they actually can't be used operationally because they're too high level. So what we have is a tier 2 documents, the next tier below it, and this is where all the nuts and bolts are. So we have CASRs. In fact, just bear with me for 1 second. I should be able to, where are we? Annotate. There we go. There's my shapes. I'll try this one. That's better. They should be able to see me circling that. I think that if I do this right, stamps and draw. Here we go. There we go. Smart ones. Right. Let me just erase that and see if I can do this right. Here we go. Right. So tier 2 documents. I'm circling that now. There we go. Civil Aviation Safety Regulations, CASRs, and they are currently in the process of being written and replacing CARs, which are Civil Aviation Regulations. So they're the old regs being replaced by the CASRs, which are the new regs. Okay, so they are what's called delegated legislation. So they're below the primary legislation. And what they include are things, as you can see on the screen there, rules of conduct, standards, and other requirements of a general application. The third dot point there, they are approved by Parliament. Whoops, that didn't work. Oh, someone wants to come in, I think. Right, there we
I
go.
think Renee dropped off.
I beg your pardon?
I think Renee dropped off.
Oh, did she? Okay, I
She's
think
again.
she's back in. Okay. They are approved by Parliament and they are enforceable. What that means by enforceable is if you violate them, then you are liable for some sort of action to be taken against you. Because they are still somewhat highbrow, to operationalize those regulations, they have what's called tier 3 documents. So those tier 3 documents are how to do these things, the methodologies, they're sort of like guidelines, if you like, but they are also enforceable. So what we have are these key documents right here. MOS stands for Manual of Standards. So that's how to do the things so that you adhere to the regulations. The CAOs are Civil Aviation Orders. They are being phased out and the MOSs are now being phased in. And ADs are Airworthiness Directives. That's to do with engineering. So we don't really worry about that. And then down below we have, and those ones there are enforceable. So if you don't follow them, then action can be taken against you. But below those, we have these other documents. They're advisory publications. And as the name suggests, because they're advisory, they're not enforceable. They're just a suggested way of adhering to the rules. And CASA creates those, Civil Aviation Safety Authority creates those to make it easier for people who operate aircraft to follow the rules without having to sit down, go through them, figure out how to follow them legally. So they say, if you do it this way, you're going to be legal. So they are not approved by Parliament and they are not enforceable, but they are very handy to have. Okay. So when we look at the rules and regulations, CASA has created what's called a cluster diagram to help try to explain how all the rules are grouped. So I'm not going to go into them. Normally I joke that because there's 1,908 pages of rules and regulations that we would go through each of them one by one. Where are we? Why is that not advancing? There we go. I usually say, well, let's start with page 1, but we're not going to do that. The key thing, though, is that the most important clusters are as follows. So you should see my laser pointer on the screen. So here we have part 91 of the regulations. So if you ever hear of an aviator talking about part 91 or part this or part that, he's talking about the regulations. So part 91 of the Civil Aviation Safety Regulations is everything to do with how we operate aircraft. Things like what's the minimum weather standards that we're allowed to fly, or what's the minimum altitude that we're allowed to fly, or if two aircraft are approaching head on, which way do you turn? Those sort of things. So the basic rules of operating aircraft in Australia. So as you can see around the outside of that cluster 91, we have all these small little satellite circles. This one here, 138, is airwork. So it's the operation of aircraft within Australia for money, but we're not talking about airlines. We're talking about things like you guys are doing with fire trail aerial inspections. And Heli Surveys is a company that operates under the airwork category. So they operate under Part 138. Those two parts of the civil aviation safety regulations are the most important for your operations. So over here, the dark blue cluster, that's all about a certification of aircraft and airworthiness. You know, are they safe to fly? What sort of equipment do they need on board? Do you guys need to know that? Not really. So you don't worry about that cluster of regulations. The green ones here are flight crew licensing. You guys don't need any licensing, so that's not important to you. So you can see how of all the regulations, there's only a few that really apply to you, and that's what we're going to be going over now. These are the things that you need to understand to make you safe and efficient as members of the aviation team. So what the New South Wales government has done is that they've created their own standard operating procedures, or SOPs, and these SOPs are applicable to all government agencies that operate aircraft within New South Wales and the ACT. Now, the SOPs actually reflect the rules and regulations. SOPs in this manner are not allowed to relax the rules and regs, but they can make them more restrictive. However, for the most part, they are just reflections of the regulations written in such a way that New South Wales government employees can understand and read the SOPs and remember them and know that they are going to be compliant with the aviation rules and regs. So SOP 2.1 of the New South Wales government aviation SOP says all members, obviously all members who are operating with aircraft, must be familiar with SOPs. And it also says that New South Wales and ACT governments are responsible for safe work practices. When we'll talk about that when we do our risk management. It says that agencies must train their members for aviation ops, and it's one of the reasons why you're here today. And any person can refuse a task if they feel that they are not capable or untrained or do not have the appropriate level of understanding to complete that task safely. And it's very important that you feel empowered to do that, because there are going to be times where you are going to feel the pressure to get the job done, but you're going to be uncomfortable because you don't think you have the skills. This is when you put your hand up and say, hey, I'm not quite sure how to do this, or I don't think I should be included in this. So a quick question for you. Who is responsible for the disposition of an aircraft, you know, where it is in time and space? Is it the pilot? Is it the mission commander? So the team leader, the Crown Lands team leader? Is it the operating organization, which in this case will be Heli Surveys? Or is it the tasking authority, which is DPHI? So who's responsible for the disposition of an aircraft? So
The pilot.
the pilot. Look at you go. You got a virtual chocolate coming your way. So it says in Regulation 91.215, during flight, the pilot in command has final authority over the aircraft and the maintenance and discipline of anyone on board that aircraft. So basically, on board the aircraft, the pilot is God. And he or she must ensure the safety of persons on the aircraft, the safety of cargo on the aircraft, and the safe operation of the aircraft during flight. That is a legal requirement. And if the pilot does not do that, he or she is liable for enforcement action. So continuing on, Regulation 91.060. So you'll see here, as I said, Part 91 is all about the nuts and bolts, the general operations of flying in Australia. So you'll see that CASR 91 point blah, blah. Hang on, someone else needs to come in.
I think Josh had to duck out.
Oh, did he? Okay.
He said he'll be back in an hour.
Yep, no worries. That's all good. Thank you for that. 91.060 says no person's allowed to be carried, or no cargo is allowed to be carried without the pilot knowing about it. Hang on, let me just put that there. Here we go. Regulation 91.22, the pilot may direct a person to do or not do anything, which is a real pain because I've asked passengers to give me a neck rub and they refuse. But, you know, it's a legal requirement. So, yeah, anyway. 91.230, pilot must check before flight that the equipment is ready, that crew members are fit to perform their duty, and that the weather, the NOTAMs stands for Notices to Airmen, air routes and aerodromes are available and suitable for the operation. Now, that second dot point down there, all crew members are fit to perform duty. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, because even minor stuff could actually make you unfit for duty when you're talking about aviation. Regulation 91.565, the pilot must ensure all passengers have been given a safety briefing. And those regulations there state the pilot must ensure all cargo is safe for carriage and that the aircraft has not exceeded its weight and balance limitations. So as I said before, the SOPs reflect the regulations. And for example, here are some SOPs, and you'll see how they reflect the regs that we just talked about. So SOP 2.3 of the New South Wales Aviation SOP says only authorised passengers can be carried, all passengers shall be manifested, and all passengers shall have a daily safety briefing prior to takeoff from the pilot or other approved person as per the aircraft's ops manual. Now, you'll notice that I've put there an exclamation mark in brackets after daily. I think that's unnecessary myself, and the SOP says daily safety briefing. What I think they mean to say is you will have a briefing every day, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a safety briefing if there is nothing different about the aircraft. So just bear that in mind. The SOP says safety briefing. What I think they mean is a daily briefing. All right. So anyway, take that on board. Personnel on aviation tasks in accordance with SOP 2.4 will wear the following: a flight suit or two-piece coverall, and they differentiate the two because the fireys can wear their fire retardant coveralls in lieu of a flight suit. Flight suits are much more comfortable, but the fire retardant coveralls are actually much heavier and suitable for firefighting, so it suits the same purpose. You need to have a flight helmet, ankle length boots, not RM Williams. You don't want elastic sided. The best types are the ones that have laces at the front and a zipper on the side. The reason for that is if you break your ankle in, say, an accident, elastic boots taken off a broken ankle would be excruciatingly painful. Whereas if you have safety boots with laces and zips, it makes it easier to either unzip them and take them off or cut the laces and take them off. So just bear that in mind. Try and avoid elastic-sided boots. Regardless, they should be ankle length. Should have flying gloves and natural fiber underclothing and a PLB, a personal locator beacon, carried on the person. Right. Does anyone have any questions about that before we go on? There's a few technical things there. No questions? Okay, great. As I said, please feel free to interject at any time. The ability to perform duties comes up in SOP 2.5. The personnel shall not engage in any aviation-related operation when their ability, their alertness, and or their coordination is in doubt, as judged by their supervisor or the pilot in command. So one of the recommended checklists that they have in the SOPs is what's called the I'm Safe checklist. So before you go flying, ask yourself as honestly as possible and as objectively as possible, am I suffering any illness that will prevent me from performing at my best? Am I on any medication that should not be used whilst flying? Something that will make you drowsy, or either over-the-counter or illegal medications? Am I suffering from any sort of stress? That stress could be psychological stress or physiological stress. So physiological stress could be some sort of illness, internal illness. But I think what they really mean there is a psychological stress, either professional or personal, that causes you to be distracted or takes your mind away from the task at hand. Am I suffering the effects of alcohol, either still drunk or hungover? Am I suffering the effects of excessive fatigue? And have I been eating correctly such that my blood sugar level will not affect my ability to perform my task? That's the I'm Safe checklist. 2.6, SOP 2.6, all cargo must be approved by the pilot, and no dangerous goods, or DG, shall be carried without the pilot's approval and proper packaging and preparation. I'll just quickly talk about dangerous goods. There's a lot of confusion about DG, what you can carry, what you can't carry. For the most part, most things can be carried in an aircraft. They just have to be packaged correctly, and the pilot needs to know about them. And some of the things that you can do as part of risk management is, say, for example, you've got something that might be flammable. Well, you may either, if you don't have that in its proper packaging, so this is what we used to do in military aircraft, you have it seated next to a doorway so that it can be jettisoned if for whatever reason it bursts into flames. So DG can still be carried, but it just should be prepared and packaged properly. So what constitutes dangerous goods? So there's lots of different things on the list, but here's a basic rundown of what may be a dangerous good. If it can start a spark, so things like electrical devices that are not in their correct packaging or their correct containers, and it's happened before where a loose batteries have actually caused a short circuit because they've come in contact with metal, and that short circuit has caused a spark, which has then caused flammable material stored nearby to start burning and cause aircraft crash. So if it can cause a spark, it could be a DG. If it can sustain a fire, such as a flammable liquid, it could be DG. If it causes any sort of chemical or actual burns, so things like acids or acidic substances, it's DG. If it's radioactive, it's DG. So there's a basic rundown of things that could be dangerous goods. So are batteries dangerous goods? Well, technically, yes, but if they are carried in the item that they're supposed to be powering, then they're not DG. Or if they're in packaging in a bag and they can't start a spark, then they're not DG. Regardless, let the pilot know what you're carrying, and the pilot can say, yep, no, that's fine, it's good to go. And make sure that it's within arm's reach whilst you're on board the aircraft. There's nothing worse than your PED all of a sudden conking out, and you need to put batteries into a camera or whatever, and the batteries are in the bag, and the bag's on the other side of the cabin, and you have to unstrap and then reach over and get it. Make sure it's within arm's reach, and make sure that you've checked the equipment before you even get on board the aircraft. All right, we just finished the rules and regs part of it. Does anyone have any questions at all? No? Okay, beautiful. We'll continue on for about another 15 minutes and we'll have a break. So we spoke before about safety briefings. So what does a safety briefing consist of? Well, it's Regulation 91-565. As we said, all passengers must have a safety briefing, and 203 says passengers must be manifested and have a daily briefing. There used to be a prescribed safety brief, and they used to call it a 2011 when it was a civil aviation order. It was called 20.11 or 2011. So you'll sometimes hear a pilot saying, I need to give you a 2011 brief. What he's saying is, I need to give you a safety brief. So here are some of the things that need to be talked about in a safety briefing. So what the rules are about smoking, when seatbelts must be worn and how to use them. So understanding how the harnesses work. Seat backs, well, that doesn't apply within the helicopter, does it? Or footrests or tray tables. How and when to adopt the brace position, so that is necessary. Where the emergency exits are and how to use them, so that's how to get out of the doors, etc. Evacuation slides, not applicable. Emergency oxygen, not applicable. Stowing of carry-on baggage, yes, that does apply. Escape path lighting, not applicable. Survival equipment, where the equipment is carried and how to use it. So there will be survival equipment on board your aircraft. Life jackets, rafts are located in their use. Life rafts, no, but you may actually have a life jacket as part of your harness. Not normal for your sort of operations. There's not too many fire trails over water, but you might find that in the future you will be in an aircraft supporting flood work, and they may give you a integrated life jacket as part of your harness. Limitations on the uses of PEDs, portable electronic devices, during different stages of flight. And if you are in a front seat and the controls are still fitted, the pilot must give you a brief on what not to do, and you must have two-way communication with the pilot. My understanding is that when Heli Surveys always takes out the controls, the secondary controls, is that correct? When you guys are doing inspections?
Yep.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. So that should not normally be an issue, but you may find for whatever reason they might have to replace an aircraft quickly, and they don't have time to take out or secure the controls. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're legally allowed to do it. The pilot just has to give you a brief on what to do and what not to do. So talking about some of the safety equipment on board. So this is what you should find on board a helicopter: fire extinguisher. Ask for, as part of the safety brief, where it is. You'll be able to see it. It's normally going to be within arm's reach of the pilot. Where the first aid kit is, there should be one in the aircraft itself, and there may be one in the cargo compartment. Survival kit is normally in the cargo compartment. The emergency locator transmitter. Now, that device will be fitted to the actual airframe itself, normally in the cargo compartment or similar or somewhere close by, but there will normally also be a switch in the cockpit. I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Seatbelts and crash positions, hatches and doors and how to use them, and there should also be a safety card on board so you can self-brief should you need to. So I was just talking about the ELT, the emergency locator transmitter. And earlier on, we talked about a PLB, a personal locator beacon carried on the person. Well, what's the difference? Well, an ELT is fitted to an aircraft. It is designed to either be manually activated, or if you have a hard landing, usually more than, say, 4G, it will automatically start transmitting. And I've experienced that. I had a hard landing and it started transmitting. I had no idea it was actually going off, to be honest. So I had a tail rotor failure. We spud it in, but fortunately we all walked away. And then I get a phone call from the Search and Rescue Center, AMSA, and they said that my ELT had activated and a rescue chopper was on its way. And I said, oh, yes, well, we did have a problem. We did have a hard landing, but everyone's fine. Send the rescue chopper home. We're just waiting for fire and ambulance to arrive. We've already called them. So the ELT will automatically start transmitting. But if you have a look on the screen there, on the lower right-hand side, you'll see that little red switch. I'll get my little laser pointer. So that's an ELT test or reset button. So when it's in the arm position, that means that it is ready to start transmitting if you have a hard landing. If you press it to the on position, it'll just start transmitting. So it should always be an arm, but if for whatever reason you have an emergency, say the pilot is incapacitated, you manage to land and you need help, just press it to on and the emergency locator transmitter will start transmitting, sends a signal and your location to the satellites, and those satellites will then inform AMSA, the Australian Maritime and Safety Agency, who are based in Canberra, and they will start search and rescue and send out a rescue chopper to you. Does anyone have any questions about that? That's an important bit of information. No? Okay. The other thing is the ELT itself. There's actually something you can activate on the actual ELT itself. It'll be a switch very similar to that one, but there should be that switch in the cockpit. Ask the pilot to show you where it is. So that's an ELT. A PLB is a personal locator beacon. Now, PLBs can be bought at, camping stores and those sort of places. They're actually very inexpensive. You can see a picture of one on the screen. Very, very simple. Right here, it's got the on-off switch, and all you do is just flick open the guard. So it's usually got a guard on it of some description, and it'll either have an integrated antenna or an antenna that you flip up. As soon as you start pressing it, it's sending a signal of your position straight to the satellites, similar to the ELT. The ELT just lasts longer. It's got a better battery. The PLB, I think, goes for about 48 hours, and you should be rescued well within that. PLB, personal locator beacon, ELT, electronic locator transmitter. And if you're on board a boat, it's an EPIRB, electronic emergency position indicator radio beacon. The EPIRB can be activated if it is submerged in water. So those are the three main beacons, and the two on the screen are the ones that you will be most familiar with as part of your aviation operations. First aid kits, there we go. They'll be on board the aircraft within arm's reach of the within the cabin, and the fire extinguishers will normally be within arm's reach of the pilot. Please don't use a fire extinguisher whilst you're flying, if possible, because you can be overcome by the fumes. So wait till you're on the ground, then grab the fire extinguisher, and then fight the fire. Survival equipment. Survival equipment should be applicable for the sort of terrain that you're going to be operating in. So it's no use having survival equipment suitable for, say, the desert if you're going to be operating in the mountains of southern New South Wales over the Mount Kosciuszko. All right, so the aircraft operator, heli surveys, will ensure that there is a survival equipment on board. And for the most part, because you're in New South Wales, it'll be equipment that is applicable to the survival situations within, say, New South Wales bushland. Right. Okay, seat belts. Yeah, we already talked about that. Okay, safety cards. They're all supposed to be safety cards on board the aircraft. Have to be heavy with pictures and light on writing. As you can see, the ones on the screen there have got a lot of writing. But regardless, it should have all the information applicable to that aircraft on how to use the harnesses, how to approach and depart the aircraft. Does anyone have any questions on the rules and regs or the safety equipment of the aircraft? And this is all part of the working safety around aircraft component of your training. No? Okay, I've got 9:48. How about we have say a 12-minute break and back at 10 o'clock?
Sounds
All
good.
right. All right, we'll see you back at 10 o'clock.